Hi, I'm Jaymie,
And I'm Stacey.
and this is the BodySmartPodcast.
And today we're going to be talking about motivation versus discipline. Do you need to be rigid to get results? Hi, Jaymie.
Okay, hi, Stacey.
So today we're talking about how different people get stuff done and how different people can achieve their goals, because we were chatting the other day about how we've both got similar personality traits, but despite that, we would approach a goal in a different way.
Correct. Yes.
And I thought it'd be really interesting to explore that, because I think a lot of people hear things like, you don't need motivation, you just need discipline. Those kind of statements can be quite off-putting if you feel like, I'm not a disciplined person.
Yeah.
So I thought actually exploring that and how that plays out in real life would be quite helpful for some people to see how it might be more flexible than how it first appears.
And you can develop the trait of becoming more disciplined or a more disciplined individual around certain parts of your health and fitness. I think the funny part of this is we were hoping we would disagree more on this and then both done a personality test and got the same answers.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was interesting.
We had to choose a topic that we wouldn't agree on, so it would be a more interesting debate.
Yeah.
And I thought this would be one, but
It's a good
turns
one.
out
It's still
not.
a good one. Yeah.
So in terms of like how we both approach a goal, I think we're both quite strong-minded in terms of once we've decided we're going to achieve something, we're going to make it happen.
Yeah.
But we would go about it in a different way. So I'd be interested to hear how you would, from those very first moments of like setting out like, to achieve something, where would you go first?
I'd really want to understand like what the goal is, like what that outcome-based goal is, and then probably get a really clear understanding of like why I want to achieve that goal. Because sometimes stuff can just seem, and that's not a bad thing if it just seems interesting, you want to pursue a certain goal, but like I want to have more of a deeper reason why I'm going to spend my time, effort, and energy on pursuing that goal. That ultimately gives you a reason to keep going after that goal when it gets a little bit more difficult.
Yeah.
And then after that, I would want to get very clear on like what the strategy is going to look like and how I can make that fit into my current lifestyle.
Yeah.
And also to have a level of adaptability to that as well. Because, you know, it's great having a perfect plan and creating a routine, but that doesn't account for just the eventualities that happen in life. Just when things like shit hits the fan, or now having a kid, how things can just change very, very quickly. Same for me, like in business and just other parts of my life. Like we all have that where, you know, the best laid plans go out the window, and it's kind of like, okay, so how am I going to adapt and still push forward towards that goal at that time?
Yeah. So having like a bunch of strategies rather than a fixed way that you're going to tackle it.
Yeah, because there's that for me, and like as you said, like when I set like a goal, I'm like very committed to making it happen. And I think there's a very famous quote which is, when you're committed to a goal, you know, you make it happen no matter what. When you're interested, you basically just do it when the stars align and everything's right. So when you've got that perfect plan, and that's the difference. You know, we see that with clients all the time. The ones who are truly committed, they've had enough of their own shit. Like they just get it done. Like, yeah, was meant to work out at 6 a.m. Kid woke up sick. House got turned upside down. Had to do it at 9 p.m. when all the kids went to bed, but I made a commitment I would get it done today.
Yeah.
You know, and it doesn't always need to be that mindset, by the way. Sometimes you can move the goalposts, but like, yeah, being committed to the goal is very important in my eyes.
And I think that really does come back to getting clear on your why, because I have a really personal experience of this where like now my exercise is very focused on rehab and things that we were talking about earlier. For me, if I don't do my workouts, I can feel that after 3 or 4 days, like I need to do it to maintain my strength and not have like little back niggles and things like that. So it is going to happen no matter what. Whereas previously it was like a fun thing that I did and I just fitted it in when I wanted to because it was fun. It's a very different reason to approach it. And then that means my strategies to get it done are very different. And I think I'm a lot less all or nothing now because my why is different.
Yeah.
And it's possibly more like the more important your why is, the more flexible you're able to be, which sounds a bit weird.
Yeah. And just going back to having a why, like if you have a flaky why, like of just something that's like not really that tangible or just it sounds like a nice to have, when you do get to those times of needing to push through, it's kind of like, it's not that important. So yeah, having something that is more tangible, like you said, and also can change, you know, like it's changed for you just after having a baby. For me, like I'm very clear on like my why is to just keep my mental and physical health in the best place possible. And that's just a consistent driver for me. And you know, for some of our clients, that why in the beginning is often to get them out of pain. You know, they lacking confidence, lacking self-belief, not feeling happy with how they look, maybe talking about themselves negatively. Often their why is like they just don't want to feel the way they are anymore. And we often find, I know you see this as well, like within the first month or two of coaching, that why can change to I want to keep feeling good and I want to keep feeling confident and build up that momentum. And I think that's important, is that the why can shift with the goal, but it's important to have something that's very concrete and strong, because even when, say, you achieve, like, let's say a weight loss goal, you know, your health and fitness is a lifelong game. So you've got to sort of reground yourself on like, why do I continue to take these actions?
Yeah. And I think, like you said, it does come by starting that journey, because to start with, particularly with many people who've tried many different exercise regimes or diets or whatever it might be that you're trying to achieve, if you've failed many times in the past, it does get that mindset of, well, I'll give it a go, but it's probably not going to work.
Yeah.
And anything can be enough to tip you over the edge of like, I just can't do it.
It just reinforces that belief that you have. So like, that's what you see with a lot of the women. It's, I've failed for 20 years.
Yeah.
I have had 100 repeated experiences of failing. So the evidence that you have that has shaped your beliefs is anytime I start a health and fitness kick, I eventually fail.
Yep.
So for that to happen, there's actually sometimes a level of comfort in that. Oh, I've gave it a go for a couple of weeks. This thing didn't work for me. It can actually be even more painful to push through that, because you're starting to step into like a new version of you where actually, hey, this is working and I do feel good and I am having success and wins, and that can feel really, really foreign. I actually had this with one of my clients, Lorraine, and she'd been on that same journey for about 20 years, and she was losing weight. She had a really flexible approach with her nutrition, was exercising 3 times a week and not 6. And she started just like saying, this is too easy. Like, it needs to be harder. Like, I just feel like giving up, you know. It was like just, and it was really weird for me, because it was like the first couple of times it happened with clients. And it was because this was such a new experience for her, because the last 20 years is like, it had been hard. It had been miserable. She had been hungry. So it was like breaking that pattern of beliefs and that evidence that they have, and stepping into this sort of, this new person that she wanted to become.
And I think that ties into what we were saying at the beginning, where there's often a belief where you have to be rigid. If you want to achieve something, you have to have this routine, you have to stick to it no matter what. I think actually when you do start out, that is important to get you past that first like change in your self-belief and change in your identity. You have to almost have a framework that you rely on. And once you make that shift, then you can introduce a bit more flex, because it is part of who you are and it is something that you want to do. But that doesn't happen overnight. Yeah,
I think this is where like the word balance can be really misinterpreted. So like some people are like, oh, you've got to have balance, or it's important to have balance in your life. But like if you look at often the reason people get themselves out of shape and become like overweight or even obese or morbidly obese is because they actually haven't had balance. Their balance has shifted so far in the other way. So sometimes we need to completely tip the scales the other way and create a level of order so you can understand. So you can build momentum, get used to winning again, and then can start to figure out what balance looks like for you, because it looks very different for everyone. It looks different for me, for you, for Sai. It looks different for all of us. And we have to start to learn what balance looks like for us. But often that will mean going through a season of having maybe more order than we would like.
Yeah. And sometimes there's a fear of creating too much structure. I know that's something that I naturally shy away from, because I feel like deadlines and boundaries and expectations then place so much pressure on me. There's that inner perfectionist that is too scared to fail. Yeah. And so creating a structure and creating expectation that I will do this 6 times a week. If I only do it 5, I am going to beat myself up. Yeah. So starting to tackle that perfectionist mindset is really important as you embark on something like this. Yeah. I mean, that's a high percentage of the women that we work with is I've got that all or nothing perfectionist mindset. Yeah. And it's often because that serves them in so many other areas of their lives. It serves them in their job. It serves them in just lots of different areas of their lives. To be perfect, to have everything, everything lined up is being a great trait for them to have. But
then, and this is like a common story, I have all the success in all these other areas of my life, but I can't quite get it with my health and fitness. And how I've really tried to explain this to some of these women is, hey, like, let's say you've done a 30-day challenge. Like you said, hey, like, you can put that pressure on yourself to do a workout every day or 5 days a week, hit your steps, track your calories, track your protein, and just get everything 100% because you know it's 28 days. But you can't, people will push through and do extreme things on those days to make sure they adhere to that process. But when you're playing the real game of health and fitness, which is you're doing this forever and the rest of your life, like that is just not possible. Like, you cannot have that 100% mentality or all or nothing mentality, because when like shit does hit the fan, or life gets hard, or you get sick, or something happens in your family, or you go on vacation or holiday, there's so many of these other variables. If you don't have that adaptable mindset and be like, hey, like, I done a 20-minute workout today, it's better than no workout. Or hey, like, I wasn't able to eat that great at lunch, but I made healthier choices and more mindful choices. When you've got that more like adaptable approach to it, it actually allows you to see more progress and go the distance because you stay consistent.
Yeah, and I think that's where the temptation for these fad diets and like quick results comes in.
Yeah.
Because you feel like, oh, I'll just do it for this amount of time and then I'll get to my goal and then I've done it, like complete. But actually, like you say, that's not the long game, because you haven't actually changed anything that's going to keep you healthy, keep you in that state of like physical shape that you want to be in. And so it is where then balance and adaptability and flexibility comes in.
Yeah.
And it's something that people often ask, like, what's the minimum that I can do?
Yeah.
And I think that is something that's really interesting. I was looking at some studies the other day where 1 to 2 workouts a week is actually the incremental improvement beyond that. If you just want to maintain your physique, is tiny.
Yeah.
So actually, if you only have time, once you've got to your goal, to do 1 to 2 like hard workouts a week, but then you're active the rest of the time, like that can be a viable lifestyle.
Definitely.
But you have to get to your goal first.
Yeah, that's a huge part. Like, you could think about this with anyone's job. So if you're an accountant or a lawyer, you got any sort of job, like a lot of those people can probably do most of their job like the back of their hand now. Requires like, a lot of the basics at least they can do without like thinking, because they've developed those skills to get there. And it could be the same with like, there's a level of skill to understanding your nutrition. There's a level of skill to becoming proficient at working out. Like, the output that me and you can probably do in a 45-minute workout next to a beginner is wild. It's wild, but it's because we've exercised for a decade and a half of our lives. So we've built up that skill. So yeah, we can have these very maybe short, more concise workouts, and it's very easy to maintain, but it's because you've put the sets and reps in to get to that point. And I think that's sometimes when we're looking at that word balance, it's like sometimes you have to go through a phase of being slightly unbalanced, and putting more time into something like exercise or learning nutrition to develop those skills, so then it can become so much easier and can serve you literally for the rest of your life. And I say that to so many of our clients who we're speaking to on breakthrough calls. I'm like, nothing will give you more of a return on your investment for your time, effort, energy, finances than investing in your health and developing the skills that will then serve you forever, because you're on a diet till the day you die. Your exercise habits and movements, if you don't use it, you lose it. So you're on an exercise plan till the day you die, hopefully, because you'll have a high quality of life. Off the back of that, it will enrich your life in ways you can't quite even imagine. So it makes sense to put some of the time in now to develop those skills, because it will serve you for so long.
And it's why we talk so often about the diet after the diet, because in like our dream scenario for our graduates, you do your diet phase, you do it once, you do it well, you learn those skills and you learn that knowledge, and then you can literally zoom out and just see the rest of your life in that maintenance, like easy mode that we were talking about. And I think that can get frustrating when you're starting out, because you look at other people who are maybe on Instagram and they are already in that phase where it's the easy mode, and you look at them and you're like, why is it so easy for them? Why is it so hard for me? But it's really important to remember you're in this little teeny section of your life where you're laying those foundational skills, and the habits and the motivation, the discipline is different to the rest of your life. That's
the famous saying, is that don't compare someone else's chapter 50 to your chapter 1. you know, and it is that whole idea of like comparison is the thief of joy. And even still, even if you started your fitness journey at the same time as somebody else, again, like you don't know how they were raised, what childhood habits they've got, their relationship with food, their relationship with themselves. There's so many other variables that come into that. So you have to, again, just focus on you and becoming the best version of you and putting one foot in front of the other.
So we've talked a lot about how we would approach health and fitness goals and the fact that we are in maybe that later phase because we've gone through that journey. So I want to know how you would tackle something new. Like right now, are you learning anything new?
Oh God, constantly. Yeah, I mean, I've had like, I'm going to learn a new language for quite some time. So that would be like a big goal. And I am literally constantly using the same excuses our clients have, which is just not the right time. It's just not the right time. And I do know that there'll never be a right time. I just have to make a commitment to sort of doing that.
That's really interesting though, because what's your why?
What's my why for doing that? Like, it's not that strong. Yeah. And that's probably why I haven't taken the steps to do it. It is very much, as we were just saying, a nice to have. Like, ooh, I'd like to go to Spain and hola. Yeah, that's as far as it's getting from me today. You know, so just like, I like the idea of being able to speak another language, but I understand it's a couple of year process of getting there.
It's so interesting though, because that language of like, oh, I like the idea of getting fit, or I like the idea of eating healthy. It's just such common language.
It is.
I think it's an easy way to identify like what goals are actually important to you.
I think that's where I like to compare like health to speaking Spanish. I'm like, right, how much is like speaking Spanish going to change my life? I'm like, well, if I lived in Spain or Mexico, why it's going to make a big difference. There's a high necessity and why to do that. And you see that with a lot of football or soccer players. They move countries, they learn the language because they're communicating with the teammates, the people they live with. So like, but when I would look at like my health, I'm like, oh, hey, I'm like 40 pounds overweight. Okay, I'm maybe in the, you know, overweight / obese category on the BMI. What does that mean? Risks of like diabetes, heart disease, quality of life is going to get worse, you know, just like all different causes of death and disease, energy levels are lower, possible gut issues. Like there's a whole, and it's like, okay, how is that impacting me every single day? I've got less energy. I don't feel as good. I can't touch my toes, you know, just like so many, and like all of that just gets worse over time. And then that's one of the ways of like how you maximize motivation is you get really clear on like all the negative, but then you also get really clear on all the positive. So like that's how you basically maximize motivation on both sides. Is like, this is all the worst things that can happen to me if I don't take action. And then it's like, hey, these are all the best things that I can't even possibly fathom that could happen. Like I'll feel my best, I'll look my best, I'll have more energy for my kids, I'll live a longer life. And when you've got these really two strong reasons why to take action, and it's not just a nice to have anymore, because we all should, not everyone will, but we all should value our health.
Yeah. And I think what you just said there about the positives and the negatives is really important, because it is something that we find a lot of our clients come with very clear ideas of what the negatives are. Like, I don't want to feel like this. I don't want to feel like that. I hate this. But actually, over time, that's a really unpleasant way to approach your goals. And it's really important to get clear on what's the flip side of that. Okay, so if you're constantly saying, I hate how I look in the mirror, can you change that language to, I want to look in the mirror and feel happy at what I see? So just changing those little bits of language can really help as you progress through the journey to shift from that old identity into that future one.
Definitely. Because I think actually using the positivity and for a lot of people in the beginning is too hard. Like the pain can actually be the fuel, and that's fine. Like it's an emotion that we feel. And if you can harness that and actually use it to better yourself, then for me, I'm like, okay, but it, like you said, it's very important as you start to shift away from that you can't just be using the pain to keep driving the actions, because eventually if your confidence improves and your health changes and your body changes, like that won't be there anymore. And if you haven't shifted that why into something more positive, then again, you can end up in a bit of a sticky situation where maybe you regress.
Or you start to fall back into that old identity, which is tied into how you felt when you used to say those things to yourself. And all the actions that went along with that come back as well.
No, definitely.
Yeah.
Anyway, that was a not me talking about learning how to learn a new goal of Spanish. How about you, Stacey? Like, what? Just ended up back there. But with yourself, if you're are you learning anything new at
so my goals at the moment, they are exercise related, but it is more about like rehab. Still struggling with like pelvic floor issues after giving birth. So for me, it is very much about, when I have a goal that I want to approach, I'm very like details orientated. I want to get into the research of like, what is the best way to approach this and make sure that I'm being really effective with my time. Probably too much sometimes, like, because it's a good procrastination tool to just like go down a rabbit hole of investigating all the different possible rehab things that I could do and wasting 2 weeks of that. So definitely done that. But yeah, for me, it is then a case of being like, okay, this is what is proven to be the most effective route, and it might not be something that I enjoy, and that's where I'm at the moment, of coming back to that discipline. Like, I just have to do it. It's not really enjoyable for me. It's not what I want to do when I've got that precious hour spare to get to the gym that week, to spend half of it just doing really low intensity, just glute.
You also don't get that like instant gratification of like, my heart's pumping and I'm sweating, I'm in the zone, I'm feeling better. It's like it's sitting there and doing the boring work a little bit more. Yeah,
and I think that is it's a good reminder for me of how important that beginner's discipline is, because it will pay off. And the beauty that I've got is I've done all that research, so I know it's going to pay off. And I can start to see those improvements. So it then carries forward to, all right, it's worth my time. I'm going to keep doing it. And then as I start to be able to do more, it's going to self kind of populate me wanting to do the rehab more, because I can genuinely see the payback. And so for me, as much as it's boring and it's not what I want to be doing with my time, I can tie into not just the why, but like the proof that it's working. And I think that's really key. Whenever you're starting something new, you need to get some quick wins early on to keep the momentum. Otherwise, you're just going to be like, well, what's the point? It's boring. I don't like it. It's new. It's hard.
Yeah, what you're going through there reminded me of like when I first started stretching.
Oh yeah.
Like, because again, it wasn't this instant gratification of like exercise and I've got to spend like 20 minutes or 15 minutes after a workout. And so I tried to do little things like, hey, I'll start with 5 minutes and start with a couple of stretches. And then a big one is I just kind of started like habit stacking it. So I was like, hey, like what books am I listening to at the moment? And can I listen to an audio book or a podcast while I'm stretching? And maybe that just distracts me a little bit more to get through the session.
So that's really interesting, because one of the notes that I've written down when we were discussing like, oh, we're different personalities, how do we tackle different things? I sent Jay a personality test, which is, if you want to go check it out, it's Gretchen Rubin's Tendencies.
Right.
And it's about how you tackle anything in life, really. And we both came out as questioners, and I was like, well, that just scuppers my plans. But one of the notes I had written down is, once questioners believe that a particular habit is worthwhile, they will stick to it, but only if they're satisfied about the habit's usefulness to them.
Yeah, that makes sense. And that's like a very logical way of thinking about things, which I feel like
to us.
Yeah, that's how our brains work. I mean, that is it. Like, if somebody tries to sell me on an idea, like, I will question the logic behind it, and then we'll need to understand that logic. It's very, not that I won't, but it's very probably rare I would go and do something without maybe understanding like the reasons why behind it first.
But it is really interesting if you look into the other tendencies. One of the other ones is obligers, and they're more the personality that if, say, their personal trainer says to them, right, you need to go and do these exercises because that's going to work for you, they will just be like, cool, I'll go do them.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Which can obviously cause an array of other issues, because there's maybe the lack of education around what you're doing. And like, that's what we kind of see with like meal plans a lot of times, or set training plans. It's like, hey, like, you've been given something, and it's great because you just go and follow it, and hopefully that's something that's going to deliver the results you want. But it's also equally important to understand the reasons why you're doing that exercise or eating these foods, and how that's serving your current goals.
Yeah, and that also allows you to have the longevity, because otherwise, once that personal trainer is no longer your personal trainer, or that meal plan comes to an end, you're then back in this what do I do land of just muddling through.
It's building, like I was saying before, it's like educating yourself about exercise or nutrition's a skill. So instead of just looking at a blanket meal plan and be like, oh, I'll just follow this quite mindlessly, or I'll just follow this plan, it's like, oh, so why am I doing squats in this program, or why am I aiming to get 100 grams of protein? Like, what's the reasoning behind
Yeah.
that? And then again, just coming back to whys, it's like, oh, like, okay, eating 100 grams of protein is going to be good for my recovery. I'm going to be more satiated. It's good for my hair and my nails. It's like, okay, like, makes a lot of sense to eat more protein then, doesn't it?
Yeah.
You know, like, I'm not going to maybe binge on foods or overeat on certain foods because I'm more satiated. It's like, right, that there's a deeper reason why to get 100 grams of protein, which was in that meal plan. So it's just like the levels into it and the understanding.
Yeah.
And again, that's like building that skill and that education around nutrition.
Yeah. And I think that's why we're so passionate, both of us, about creating that level of education for our clients. It's not just something that they come, they do what their coach says, they get to their goals, and then we're like, okay, then thanks, bye. Yeah. Actually, we don't let you graduate unless you've learned all this stuff, because we feel like we haven't done our duty to you and to your long-term health and happiness if you haven't actually understood why.
We haven't set you up for success, and that's the most important part of it. Like, if we've given you those sort of blanket cookie cutter plans, then you haven't actually developed the necessary skills to go and do this for the rest of your life.
Yeah. And part of that as well is figuring out what is your personality and what are the things that make things click for you or make them become a long-term part of your life, because it's going to be different. Whether your personality is different or whether your life is different, you're going to have to tackle things in different ways. And then life changes. And if you don't know how to assess those things and find new strategies, you're going to be back to square one.
Yeah. Because you need to have the ability to problem solve parts of your own health and fitness as life goes on. So like a common problem that I might have with a lot of clients is, hey, like, they moved houses or they got a different job. And maybe the job is now costing them more time, or maybe they moved house and the gym isn't on the way home anymore. It's 20 minutes out the way. So previously they drive home, the gym's on the way home. So it'd be quite easy for them to get into the gym and do that exercise. But now it's like, I've got to drive 20 minutes the opposite way. I'm going to lose that time. And you notice that your exercise habits regress and decrease because you moved house, but maybe you don't have the awareness to even problem solve that. And you're just like, hey, like, I moved house 6 months ago and I've gained 20 pounds.
Yeah, that's so common.
And it's just like, and instead of having that ability to be like, this has changed, right? There's a lot of friction there for me to go to the gym now. Can I find a way of enjoying a different type of exercise or look for different gyms? And it's just having that awareness to be able to problem solve. Hey, I've moved locations or houses. What's going to work for me now? Like, or how do I need to change my expectations to keep on top of my health? Or I've moved jobs and I'm working more hours, or I'm getting less time to eat lunch and there's less options here. You know, it's just, it's understanding how to pivot and adapt with that. And then a huge one would be having kids.
Yeah, definitely.
And just how much that can 180, 360 and everything else spin your life upside down.
Parallel universe.
Definitely. But like just having that adaptable mindset to be like, you know, to be okay with change.
And I think to do that, you have to be really clear on what those priorities or those non-negotiables are, though, because if you don't understand what even got you in a good place, how would you even know to problem solve to get those things back into place?
Yeah.
And so one of the big things that we really focus on with our clients is getting them at the end of their journey. They've kind of got a guide to taking care of me, and they've got in there the list of the priorities that they know they have to focus on to stay feeling their best.
Yeah.
And I think once you've got that, you can always just refer back to it and be like, oh, that's why I'm starting to gain weight, or that's why I just feel knackered all the time, because those few things that I figured out were so key to me have just slipped off the radar.
Yeah, because I'll go through phases where I will actually like gain a little bit of weight and I'll be like, oh, I can like feel it on my sides. I'm like, I mean, I can just like instantly think back over the last couple of weeks and I'm like, yeah, you've been eating out too much and with too much ice cream after dinner and, you know, that type of stuff. And I'm like, oh, I've gained a bit of weight. I'm like I can physically feel it and I'm aware of it. But then like over like the next like couple of weeks, I will just eat a couple less snacks, dial back my calories, try and walk a little bit more. And that sounds like, oh, that sounds really easy for you, Jay, but that I've had that awareness over the past decade of like, I will go through phases of maybe I gain a little bit, lose a little bit. And I've got kind of like that line that I won't really cross, but it's never a chore or a difficult thing for me to now do, to just tip those balancing scales, because I've done it for so long and I've got that awareness. And again, it's just a skill, like you said, of like, yeah, it's very easy for me to understand. It's not like I just wake up and go, wow, I've got love handles. You know what I mean? It's just like, I'm like, yeah, I've been eating a little bit too much and maybe drinking too much. So yeah.
So for somebody who's listening to this, who is starting to feel that way, starting to feel like, oh, I'm not feeling as great as I did 6 weeks ago, where would you suggest that they start?
I think you have to have a really honest conversation with yourself about like what has changed, prior to the 6 weeks. Of the things in your overall lifestyle changed? Have you, like I said, moved houses? Has something significant happened or changed in your life? That'll be like a really easy one to hold on to and be like, yeah, that's happened and it's impacted my lives in several different ways. We're saying some of the nice things there, like moving houses or whatever else, but people's family members get ill and sick, and there's death in families, and these can all throw massive spanners in the works for people's health. And like, yeah, that could be like a very obvious reason why maybe that's happened. But if you're now at that point of like, hey, like, I don't want this to continue, you have to really reflect on like, hey, like, so what behaviors have changed over the past 6 weeks? Maybe what was I doing different? And how can I maybe just create a little bit more structure moving forward to get back to maybe where I was and to move forward again?
So kind of bringing in that beginner's discipline that we've talked about today, and just saying to yourself, it's going to be a short period of time, but I just need this structure right now to bring me back into alignment.
Because the worst thing you want is 6 weeks have gone by, you're not feeling good, you're probably feeling in a bit of a rut, your energy levels are low, your mindset's maybe a little bit more negative. It's like, okay, we need to reduce the friction as much as possible. So get a clear plan for the next couple, like 2 weeks, like go and do a big food prep. Tell your friends or family members like, hey, I'm committing to this plan. So you've got a level of accountability, and then go at it for the next 2 weeks. And, straight away, you're going to start to feel better if you exercise. You're going to have like good food choices in the house, and you're going to start to build up those positive behaviors again, and a bit of momentum, which is easier to move forward from. But when you're in that place of like feeling stuck in a rut, it's you need to get something that's going to reduce the friction as much as possible. And a big part of that is like removing like the complete decision fatigue that you can have on a day-to-day basis. So it's like putting a day to one side, book your workouts in for the next 2 weeks, create levels of accountability, get the shopping done, just reduce the amount of decisions. So it's just basically easy or easier for you to take action for the next 2 weeks.
And I think the really big thing to take away from that and everything we've said today to bring it together is, don't feel like you have to then say, well, I've started gaining a bit of weight. All right, I need to go right back. I need to go super hard because I need to make up the last 6 weeks. Because that is only going to end up in that yo-yo cycle again. And so when we're saying like spend some time doing food prep, right, plan out your workouts, whatever it is that's changed in your life, like plan it accordingly. So if that means, all right, it's going to be 15-minute workouts, but I've been doing none. Then that's what you need to do. You don't need to plan in an hour workout every single day to get back to a bit more of a normal momentum.
Definitely. And it's most of the time you'll do a 15-minute workout and it'll turn into half an hour. Because you know what I mean? Because you just like, it's honestly most of the time it's just convincing yourself to get it done. It's like a lot of people, like the hardest part is like walking through the gym doors. Like once they're there, it's fine. You know what I mean? It's just like getting up and going, or like starting a workout. It's like, say you're going to do 15 minutes and you end up doing 30. But for those people who have only genuinely got 15 minutes, 100% go for it. Like building that muscle of consistency again and keeping your promises to yourself is so important.
Yeah. And I think actually one of the things, one of the notes that I'd written down is a big game changer for me, was realizing I can have permission to only do 15 minutes. And if on the day I do 15 minutes and I'm like, no, I'm really not feeling it, I can go home and I can be like, that's fine, you did 15 minutes. But most of the time I don't. I get into the zone and then I'm like, all right, I'll just do one more set, or maybe I'll go and play over there on that little bit of kit. And I end up 45 minutes there. But having the permission and the lack of self-judgment of you should be doing an hour.
And that's important. I think we, myself included, all can judge ourselves way too harshly sometimes. And just giving ourselves a little bit of leeway and a little bit of like a little bit of a break, especially if you're having sleepless nights because of kids, or there's deadlines that are like insane in work where it's just like, hey, it's like we're coming to the end of this quarter and it's like go, and it's like 12, 14, 16-hour days, like non-stop. It's like, hey, like like it's tough, it's a grind and it's a season, but it's like, like 15-minute workout, you know what I mean? Like we'll get that done. That's something. Like we've done 3 15-minute workouts this week, but work was crazy. It'll be quieting down next week and I've stayed consistent still, and I'll up it up at the next notch after that.
I think like so much of everything to do with health, fitness, nutrition, it's like it's this fine balancing act between being disciplined and having a routine and structure to also being flexible. Like, and you're the only one that can know where that sweet spot is for you. It kind of ties back into the last episode we did together, which was about like cutting the BS with yourself, because if you're being truly honest with yourself, you'll know where that sweet spot is, and you won't be too harsh on yourself, and you won't be too flat with yourself.
Definitely.
And that's where you really need to aim for.
Yeah. And you just can't, you know, sometimes you'll get it wrong. Like sometimes, like I get it wrong sometimes where I'm like, you know what, my inner bitch won that day and I could have done a workout, and I told myself I was a little bit too tired. But like I knew that afterwards, and it's kind of like, okay, like don't let that voice win next time. You know what I mean? And because I'm playing the game of life, you know what I mean? I want to stay consistent for as long as possible. And then there are certain times where I'm like, I can feel like I'm getting a little bit sick. You know, I'm gonna dial back the intensity of my workouts, do less, make sure I get a good night's sleep. You know, it's just kind of that constant sort of balancing act with it all. And yeah, you know, that is the difficult part with your mindset of like I find this at least difficult sometimes, of like where I should give myself a break, and maybe where I'm just kind of being like probably a little bit lazy and could have got it done. You know what I mean? Yeah. Just that internal chatter that's like, come on, like you're a bit too tired.
I think it's probably quite reassuring for people to know that sometimes you feel lazy.
Yeah, well, that's I call it my inner bitch, don't I? That voice, and it's because it's in those certain situations where like it's, you know, like everyone has that, where you wake up in the morning, you just feel knackered, and the last thing that you want to do is maybe go and do a workout. And I do all the things. I lay my gym clothes out the night before and I do all that, but like still I'm just like, but you know, you push through, and then once you've done that for a long enough period of time, like I have now, it just becomes your default. You're able to you push through that uncomfortableness to a degree.
And I think even that is something, again, adjusting your expectations is huge. Because for me, if I'm in that mood, I'm not going to put gym clothes on then. And like part of the reason there's not many videos of me working out on Instagram is because I mostly do it in like a nursing bra, my pants, because it's just one less step. It's like one less barrier. Okay, I don't actually need to put gym clothes on, just do it. And like taking away those self-created barriers can be really helpful, because my gym clothes aren't clean, my trainers are in the car, like you don't need them. Yeah,
exactly. And they can all just be like really great forms of procrastination and excuses, and that is that part of cutting the BS with yourself and be like, well, just get it done. You will feel so much better afterwards once you have.
Cool. So hopefully that's been helpful for people to realize you don't have to be super rigid. You don't have to have a meticulous routine for the rest of your life to stay in shape.
Let's go as far as saying like you can't. Like that mindset for most people who have got like multiple responsibilities, like that mindset won't serve you. You know, you've got to have that, be able to adapt, especially through different seasons of your life.
And if you are currently in that phase where you are establishing a routine, just know it's not forever. Like there is going to be a time in your life where this does feel easy. I promise if you stick with it, it will, and it will become something that you want to do.
And if you've been going on it for a long time and it's not getting any easier, that could be down to the fact that maybe you're following that meal plan or that training plan and you're not learning the skills. So maybe you're being a obliger, was it the personality trait? And you're just obliging by the plans that you've got on it, and it constantly feels hard. That could be a cue to be like, hey, maybe I need to like become more educated on like why I'm doing the things I'm doing, because that is ultimately what will give you the freedom to have a more balanced and adaptable lifestyle.
That's the goal.